Hello and welcome to this podcast. Thank you for taking time on a weekend, and I look forward to our conversation. For a change, we've been talking about these kind of subjects earlier, death and impermanence of sorts. So my question on something that we spoke last: how do you view death? Is there any uh, good aspect to it? I want to start on that today.
Uh, Firstly, I'll start with saying just thank you for having these discussions in general and putting it out there. Like,
Hmm.
even for people to have these conversations might be uncomfortable or might not, so it's just giving them the opportunity to talk about it. So thanks a lot, like, you for doing this at all.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't know, like for me, so that has been in the time that I have lived, I probably have seen few close people die, and I also think I have reacted very differently to all of them. Like, I don't know, like when I see people like really grieving and crying and things like that, it's I've not reacted in the same way. So I don't. I also feel maybe I don't understand grief as much as most people do. I don't know. But I guess it's different for everyone. And but what I probably did notice over time is that you learn some things. You start recognizing that person once that person moves on, and that's really sad because maybe you should give that person as much importance when they're there, not when they're like not there. But but I feel like suddenly, and it comes in like very random times. It's not like, you just sit and keep thinking, ki, acha, why this, that, but you do something and then you'll remember that person, So it's, yeah,
Hmm.
I just,
I think you raised a couple of points, including one that I feel very strongly about. Uh, I had a death of a close one very recently, and one of the things that I also realized was um, the context of life itself, or that person's life came alive to me only post her passing away, and I started to see things in a lot more quote unquote enlightened manner. Um, I think one is very, at least I felt that I have been very judgmental, uh, reactionary, impatient, and unsure about how to read a person or a situation. Um, until it has passed, and post my learning about this, I am trying to be a little aware in the moment as much as I can be. Obviously, I still have those flaws. It's easier said than done that you sit down and be in a meditative mode all day. It's not like that. But I try and be a little considerate, if not immediately, but immediately after. So if I have said something rude to you by chance, I'll try and consider my circumstances. I'll figure out what I really feel about it, and I'll try and make amends. At least I apologize for my tone. It happened very
mm,
recently with my um, daughter as well. I was speaking to her about something, and I she had not followed some rule that I had set for her, and I said, no, you have to follow this rule. And later, when I had calmed down, I actually ended up telling her, look, I want to be able to express my uh, apology about the way I spoke, although I do not deny the fact that what I spoke, I stand by it. That rule has to be followed, and this is how it is. But the way I spoke, I think I'm still working on it. So I would want to be
mm,
as open about it. Uh, it is easier now. It wasn't so earlier. I don't think I could say sorry at all. It took a long time, and so my question to you is
Sorry,
more.
before you go ahead, I
Please,
actually want to add to that also. I think
please.
you said that quite correctly. I think it just teaches you how to deal with things a little differently.
Hmm.
You like till you've not seen someone like just disappear in thin air. That's when you realize, like not everything runs by a certain rule book. Not
Ah,
everything
mhm.
has to be done
Yeah.
only like this because things just happen and you have to deal with things in that moment. You cannot be rigid about things. And
Oh,
that I think is what you learn because that's when you then empathize with someone because how can everyone be prepared 24/7? You can't be prepared. You might behave differently in whatever situation it is. Not necessarily death. Like something might happen, you might fall
mhm.
sick. Like you can't expect the same level of performance or
Yeah,
in any
compassion.
aspect all the time. It just shows you that like in person this is what
Mhm.
happens. Like if you were in that place, then what?
I think it's beautiful. It's beautiful that you brought this up and gives a nice, rounded perspective that needs deeper thought. Um, my question was actually about the first part of your answer when you started. You said that your reaction is different from most people, and you have found yourself not really grieving in the conventional sense. I have a provocative question there. Is it because you are so selfish that you uh, do not bother about anybody else at all? I want an answer from the depth of your, from the core of your heart, kind of thing, where you really realize, is it how I function? Because there is something that I also would relate to, perhaps.
So it's interesting you say that, and I thought about this a lot because I keep wondering why don't I just feel it? Like it's just weird. Like you can't force yourself to feel sad, but I don't feel sad, right? So in my head also I'm like, why are you not bothered? Like why are you so ठीक है हो गया, that sort of thing. And I don't know. So I am an only child, so I don't know what it is to be
Hmm.
selfless in that sense. I don't know how to look out for someone else, or like if you have an older brother, a younger brother, or a sibling, you tend to
Hmm.
look out for each other. I might have not had that, but meaning in general, I think I am someone who is nice to people. It's not like I'm mean to people. So that's also not a problem. I don't think I'm selfish. But yes, I don't know how to think for someone more than I know to think for myself. So obviously I put myself first maybe in most situations. Also maybe one of the things that my mom always told me all my life that, you're the only child. You have to look out for yourself. You have to be strong enough to be capable of, handling your life. You have only you. If anything happens to us, who's going to take care of you? You have to take care of yourself. So I think also that way maybe I am a little bit more self-sufficient. Ki itna I don't feel when somebody moves or leaves. It's not that, but I also feel somewhere in my head I also feel it's just the way it works. I think that acceptance is there. It's not like I know you cannot
Hmm.
expect
Hmm.
someone to just be there with you forever. Now maybe yeah, someone's time has come early as against what you would want, but it is going to happen. So if you're aware that acha, it is going to happen, I think somewhere it's not so difficult to take it.
Hmm. Okay. One interesting thing thought that came up. I want to draw a little parallel because I want to really know what you think about this. In course of my practice, one of the things that I've struggled with for a long, long time is compassion, and I'll tell you where I come from. Uh, to be a practitioner of any kind of meditation requires a lot of discipline, and you literally have to work out of your skin to develop a habit of daily practice or some such habit which requires work. It's not like what people think. You close your eyes and you look like the Buddha. There's no such thing. Internally, there is the same angst that people have. Because if I have just fired you, or if I have had find you attractive, or I find some greed overtaking me, or anything at all. When I sit, I'm the same person. I don't become a Buddha just because I'm sitting cross-legged on a cushion. It's a
Right.
it's a good picture to see, but it doesn't work like that. It's internally the same pushes and pulls till the time you come to the object of your meditation. You settle down. Entire hours are lost, and day after day there's a lot of struggle. You don't want to sit. Your laziness, your uh, the world is far more interesting, and you want to get out. You don't want to sit and develop. Now, when you're being so tough on yourself and you finally manage to have a discipline, when you hear somebody else not following any discipline in any genre of life, in any aspect of life, um, it becomes very difficult to find that as a valid excuse. You keep thinking, why are you making excuses? Why can't you get to work when? Because you have been so harsh on yourself and you
And
finally
you've done
found
it.
that it
Yeah.
works. How do you develop a heart which is um, which understands the other person's point of view? So my question to you comes from there. When I ask you about selfishness, it is
Yeah.
from this context. So do you have anything to share on that?
Yeah, actually, that's really something that I've not thought about in very long. But so growing up, and I've worked with. Thankfully, I've had like some really great bosses and people I've worked with, and over time, I always had this, image of people working who I would like look up to. This is how they are. They're like perfect, and they do everything on time, and they are this. And like you said, so you're trying to emulate, this person or these people, and then whoever else you're working with below you or alongside you, you're just like not understanding why they can't function in the same way.
Hmm.
But over time, what I realized, and then, like maybe also the better I got, maybe I could also then see through the people, above me or the people who I used to look up to. And then I realized that they are also not that perfect. They have found their strengths and weaknesses, and they have figured how to play with it and do what is on priority and do what needs to be done right. And that's when you realize that no person really gets everything right, you know. And for all you know, you're also not getting everything right. You are assuming you're doing it all right, but you're not. You're doing what you want to do right. But there are other aspects that you are doing which are not right. And then the same thing can be said by someone else thinking about you, like, what is this person not, like, figuring these things out? But those things are not important to you. So, over time, I think I've realized that you need to understand what is important for the person who you're working with. And if they are not then doing things right in that aspect, which they feel, then there is a problem. But if they're not taking something seriously, because it is not priority for them, you'll have to let it pass. Because you can't expect everyone to be great at everything. Even if you have all the discipline in the world, I feel like you can't do everything. There are some things that you will not do right. Now the point is whether you want to recognize those things that you're not doing right, or you want to recognize the things that they are doing right, is the choice that you make.
So you're basically saying that understanding oneself owns self better over a period of time through various kinds of experience and introspecting on the aspects that make us helps us feel compassionate towards the other person when we realize that that same person has certain flaws but certain good things which we may not be looking at earlier in our judgmental way. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because you are, so say someone who's working under you is great at people skills, like great with dealing with people and whatever, but they are not great with, like, say, documentation. Like making,
Hmm.
like keeping everything in place, keeping everything updated in their budgets or presentations or whatever. And the fact that you're just expecting them to do that day in, day out, like, why is this not done? Why is this not updated? But the point is, what you're not seeing is at the back end, maybe they are figuring a lot of other things. They're figuring, because they're so great with people, maybe they figured a way to get someone else to do their work. And I'm not saying that you're encouraging them to, like, not do something, like push the bucket, not any of that. I'm just saying, when you understand what that person's strength or weakness is, then you can give them work related to that. Then you realize, acha, I'd rather give him or her this set of things because that he will do and he will overachieve, as again forcing him to do something which is not his thing.
So connecting it back to the topic of death, I want to bring in a new aspect that I don't think I've covered in earlier conversations either. Not in the depth that we are talking about. So the death of expectation of a certain kind is not necessarily bad.
I didn't get what you're trying
So,
to say.
for example, if I expect, say, you and I are working together, and I have a certain expectation that you will do this, and for a period of time you do not do this, and instead of getting worked up, I realize that you are good at something else, and I reorient myself. So, you have not lived up to my expectations in the first place, but I have allowed the death of that expectation to happen. Okay, let it be. Let me not judge
Yeah,
you. Let me relook at things,
for
and
sure.
then come back to you and say, okay, this is something that you like to do, or this is something that you're good at, or at least you're willing to be good at and willing to work on. So I give you that aspect. So in that sense, there is a rebirth of sorts. So in life also, if one were to relook at, now connecting to the bigger point, the loss of someone, do you think there is something good that one can take away from the death of a close one? Is it possible?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think a lot. Um,
Okay.
it gives you a complete shift of perspective. It tells you things that are really, like, which really make sense. Because we're all, like, stuck in all these things that which we consider important. But when something like this happens, it makes you start thinking whether what you're doing is really important or what you could have done is what you need to change. And if you've looked at it like that, and if you're willing to accept it and make that change in you, I think, yeah, it's definitely positive. It's a change that you're willing to bring inside yourself, which is positive.
So, are you saying that the impermanence, as the Buddha calls it, or else the loss of something or someone whom we hold dear, has certainly brought about a void um, or something that we cannot deal with in the present. But over a period of time, if we allow the whole thing to settle itself down and relook at what is available, because even at work, that's how we deal with things. So if you are given a certain timeline, a certain budget, a certain way of working, you always have to either say yes or no. There is not much choice you have in the matter. Sometimes
Right.
life brings you to a desperate level where you have to accept what comes to you and you try and make the best of the situation. So even here, it's saying you may discover things can be done in a different manner and also feed that experience so that your future experiences are better. So, for example, if you've not had a good relation with somebody who's passed away and you realize you've been wrong or not attentive enough or not expressive enough or whatever ABCD, any kind of assets that you feel are missing. So, in the next time around with other family members, other friends, other relations, you spend time developing that skill and uh, that facet that is missing, so that you do not do the same mistake again.
Repeat it. Yes, for sure. I totally agree. In fact, if I had to bring parallels to exactly what you said with my life, so I lost someone I was really close to,
Hmm.
and I felt maybe at that age and at that time when I lost that person, I didn't have the maturity to handle that situation, and I ran away from the fact of how
Oh.
it should have been dealt. Um, but having now that maturity and looking back at that, I will not take anyone for granted going ahead, and I now understand the need to be there for someone in a difficult time. So now, even if I have, and like that time I was younger, I didn't even have anything that was like, oh my God, so important that, you didn't need to be around. But today, even if I have something more important, I will choose to be there for someone who needs, anyone in those last hours as against doing whatever else is needed. So I think time, and that's what if you've been able to see and be aware of it, for sure it will change you.
Um, so one last question I have. This wisdom that you're speaking of, that you have right now, how is it connected? Uh, so let me phrase it properly. Uh, you said you had this loss when you were fairly young, and today you would deal with it differently. So many years have passed. Um, why did it not happen within 1 year of that episode? What is it that these years in between have taught you? Is my question to you.
So I think in that 1 year, while I didn't do it, I think somewhere I knew that what I was doing was not right. But it takes you time till you see a lot of other people around you, till you, like, I don't know, it hit me like slowly over the years.
Hmm.
And I don't know what exactly changed. Like, it's not a particular incident, or it's not a particular, like, in fact, nobody probably even addressed it at any point in my life. I feel like I'm maybe just, like, telling myself this. But it's not like anyone came up to me and said, oh, you did this and it was not right, or anything of that sort. I think in time it just comes to you, and it's part of growing, where you realize things which need to be given importance over things that don't. Like, I can't pinpoint and say
Yeah.
what made that change. I can't.
Yeah. No, I wasn't even looking at that. This has been a wonderful, thought-provoking conversation, not only on that, but a lot of little aspects that make life, at least in the urban milieu that we are part of as of right now. Thank you for your time. I would want to leave the conversation hanging like that itself, where people can mull over their own thoughts about the subject. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.